But first, there are elections taking place in South Africa. And South Africa has the paradox of being led by the African National Congress, the liberation movement that led South Africa to democracy and liberation in the early 90s under the iconic leadership of Nelson Mandela and many others, including Oliver Tambo, Walter Sisulu, Joe Slovo, as well as the vital and strategic contributions of Govan Mbeki, Thabo Mbeki, Ronnie Kasrils, and Cyril Ramaphosa, even Jacob Zuma, historically speaking. This is a movement that has produced some of the best leadership, some of the most strategic leadership the world has ever seen. And the fusion, the tripartite partnership with the African National Congress, the South African Labor Union movement, and the South African Communist Party not only led to the liberation of South Africa, but it also built some of the most successful alliances in political history with lessons for how we do politics today. How do we synthesize and transcend the supposed divisions between class and Marxist analysis while liberating all of the areas of identity and race and other areas of subjugation and direct oppression, the relationship between exploitation as an economic function that applies to all workers, no matter how privileged, and full-scale oppression that, of course, hits groups disproportionately and massively, such as the Africans in South Africa under apartheid. It's also a source of incredible frustration and tension, because over 20 years after the liberation, South Africa remains mired in some very serious problems. Most of these problems reflect the fact that the ANC gave up on, or was forced out of doing by international capital, the second liberation. The second liberation was that after a political one, there would be, as the Freedom Charter outlined, a vital document in African National Congress history, a broader realization of economic democracy and redistribution for a flourishing of all South Africans. There was always a profound commitment both to pathways to socialism, as well as what they would call and do call non-racialism and anti-communalism, full, broad-based democracy in South African politics. The ANC has, with incredible exceptions, of course, Mandela's very important leadership, Thabo Mbeki's mixed and complicated record, Jacob Zuma's mostly kleptocratic and cynical one, and Ramaphosa's attempt to impose third-way politics in a global situation where they don't apply. The ANC in power has oscillated between some genuine achievements, but acquiescing to Western capital, as well as following and conforming to other political trends. Let's play a brief clip here. This is a sense of ANC leadership out campaigning in the South African electorate as elections approach on May 8th. There have been multiple professional hits and other acts of violence in regional ANC parties, and a lot of this flows out of, again, the initial need to capitulate to Western and global capital. That's what Kasrils was speaking about there in the cold open, and I've interviewed him about on this show, as patrons know. Then there is the fact that under Jacob Zuma, there was a whole other scale of corruption. Not the corruption that we all consider to be corruption, which is in fact capitalism, which is the submission of human needs to capital interests, but more of the sort of variety that people talk about in the general parlance, like incredible compromise of government by specific interests, such as the Gupta family. The Gupta family were a family of entrepreneurs, initially from India, who had a great deal of connection and sway over the Zuma family and the Zuma government, including apparently, according to some reports, veto power and selection power over key ministries. That type of state capture is what they called it in South Africa. During that time, Jacob Zuma, who had been an intelligence chief in the ANC and a deputy under Thabo Mbeki, he was forced to resign because of corruption allegations then, and also was accused of rape as well, stood trial and was acquitted on those charges. Zuma's government ended up hiring a British PR firm, Bell Pottinger, who were a Tory-connected, London-based PR firm with, again, conservative connections that designed a campaign on white monopoly capital and suggested that Zuma and the Gupta family were instrumental in fighting this thing, even as the Zuma record overall was not left. In fact, it was profoundly anti-labor and was not doing structural questions in the economy, but a sort of cheap misuse of populism and identity politics was deployed to shore up Zuma's power. And Zuma still plays those politics as he tries to keep himself from being prosecuted and keep swaying the ANC today. He's an incredibly effective, fascinating strategist, but unfortunately not one with apparently much ethics or commitment from all available reports. Ramaphosa rises to take Zuma's place. Ramaphosa represents the capital-aligned version of the ANC. He got his start as one of South Africa's best trade unionists, was a major figure in the liberation in the 1980s. After leaving politics, he was deployed to the private sector, where he made hundreds of millions of dollars. And also in 2012, along with, of course, the Zuma government, he is directly implicated in the murder of the Marikana protesters, which were a group of striking miners. Ramaphosa had direct financial interests in this mine through one of his companies and board seats. And there is an email before the day of these killings of him calling for concomitant action, in his words, to take on the wildcat strike. This is who runs the ANC now, and who might be the best of very bleak alternatives. This upcoming election will be important in determining the trajectory of South Africa. And as we've said, over the past couple of decades, the government has taken a developmental first model in the hopes of luring international investment. The economy was boosted by the commodity boom of the early 2000s, as were all of the BRIC countries. But this connection has led to massive unemployment as manufacturing suffered from commodity and the commodity boom ended. There will be no recovery from the economic crisis without massive political change in the ANC or the rise of a new political formation. Now, there is, of course, the EFF, the Economic Freedom Fighters, led by the very charismatic leadership of Julius Malema. They call themselves Marxist-Leninist Fananists. And they are advocating some incredibly important proposals, though Malema was also close to Zuma and didn't form his own party until being sidelined by Zuma. The question remains, is this more sort of populism or Marxism? Then there's the Black Land Movement, which Zuma has apparently been playing footsie with, even as he still sort of campaigns for the ANC in Natal. And as far as I can tell from the BLM, their politics don't have a Marxist strain. They're strongly xenophobic and seem to basically directly echo the talking points that were initially developed by the London-based firm Bell Pottinger. And as we saw with strikes in February, there's still a significant power in the labor movement. South Africa has 30% union density, but because of their entrenchment and relationship to the ANC, there's been a leadership crisis and a struggle between more radical and conciliatory sides of the labor union. NUMSA, importantly, has broken off from the tripartite and is attempting to forge new radical alternatives. The ANC led South Africa out of one of the worst regimes of the 20th century. They immediately faced an international community bent on undermining the power of the post-colonial state. And they did this by uniting and mobilizing a historic base around economic and racial justice. The path forward for the ANC needs to be in both revitalizing their legacy, which I'm sure they still can, and in the years of their success and struggle for liberation, the models and leadership they provided could be a blueprint for the rest of us as well. Do you guys have anything? I know Matt is a big Jacob Zuma fan, so would you like to defend Zuma, Matt?
I prefer Jacob Zuma.
I don't even know. Who is Jacob Zuma?
I was just making a Zima joke.
Oh, does that still exist? I joke that Sam drinks Zima, but is that still a company?
I don't know if it is. Do you know?
I don't even know what you're talking about.
Zima, wasn't it like an alcohol-free beer?
No, I think it was not even. It was like a sweet alcoholic beverage or something.
No.
I don't even know.
Yeah, no.
I sort of know that it exists. Like I know Ace of Base exists. I know Zima exists. That's about it.
Oh, I know Ace of Base exists, and I know more about Ace of Base than even that. They were Nazis.
So you know what's crazy about that? That was like in middle school. There were two stories that everybody repeated, and one was that Lauryn Hill said that she would prefer her children starve than white people buy her music, which there's no videotape of her saying that, unfortunately. And the other was Ace of Base are Nazis, and it turns out 50% of the middle school rumor mill.
Also, Marilyn Manson was the main, or was the nerdy kid from the Wonder Years or something like that.
Oh, I don't remember that. Was he?
No.
No. Too bad.
Anyway, Noisy did an article on it in 2013.
But is it just? It wasn't all of them. It was one guy. Ace of Base,
Before
right?
he founded Ace of Base, Ulf Ekberg
No, that's already an untrustworthy name.
was a neo-Nazi skinhead. Did Ekberg use Ace of Base's success and his opportunity to erase his neo-Nazi past? Yeah, I don't know.
Well, thank God they didn't get successful now. He would be an opportunity to enhance his neo-Nazi politics.
You go back to I Saw the Sign, and it's just a giant swastika in the music video, and it's like, we should have saw this coming,
should have
guys.
seen this. They're a great band. They do great work. Griscom, anything you want to throw on the docket?
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in talking about the corruption issue around Zuma, because what we've seen is while people have been trying to, come after Zuma Zuma's corruption was pretty ridiculous. I mean,
right.
He put a swimming pool in his backyard and claimed that, and had the government pay for it, claiming that it was it was to protect him from fires.
It was to protect him from
Right?
fires. It was security. He built an amphitheater and a swimming pool, and he said they were security enhancements.
But
like that's like just
it was pretty next level.
And by the way,
stuff.
and this is not like Lula stuff.
Well,
this
that's
is
what I
like
wanna say.
actual documented.
And
like,
the corruption there too, though, is when you look at oftentimes when you have these anti-corruption drives, it's not been something that's been really focused on, making the government work better for the people.
Right.
Right. It's very much has been, oh no, this is making us look bad to international investors, and they're not going to want to give us capital because they're afraid we're going to spend it poorly. Right. And that's very important to recognize too. Is like oftentimes even these anti-corruption drives, there's always a second motive behind them, and you should be aware of that.
100%. You've just watched a Michael Brooks show video, and you can watch all of our full main live shows every Tuesday night at around 7 p.m. Eastern Time, and subscribe to get all of the clips you want. We're covering the globe. We're focusing on international relations, the intellectual dark web. We're having fun. We're doing deep dives with a lot of amazing guests. Of course, become a patron for the whole thing at patreon.com/TMBS, or subscribe to this YouTube channel and help us keep growing and get that content out there. Subscribe below.